What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Nutrition Blueprint podcast. It's funny that the other day I was actually like doing a live, and I was like, "Welcome to the Viva Nutrition Live." And I was like, "Whoa,
wait, hold on."
Is like,
I'm just gonna stop. Come back.
And because I was like, it's just like I did it for. I mean, View Nutrition existed for 5 years, so like, give me a break. But anyways, welcome back. We're back into our monthly Chit Chat series. We decided to do this monthly because I get tired seeing these guys' faces every. No, I'm just kidding.
No, he's not.
This is bull crap. I feel like I got broken up with, and you just want to be friends at this point.
No, I'm just trying to be respectful of your time.
Now that he's American, he gets it.
Yeah, our podcast is not to the point where we're monetizing enough so I can pay you guys for your time. So I'm just trying to be respectful of it.
Not yet.
Oh man,
let me hook you up with our agent, dude.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's actually talk about you, Dezi. I know you just released a new podcast, man. So and the actual art, it's like really like mind blowing, pun intended. So what's that about?
Dude, yeah. So obviously I had started the Men of Purpose podcast, and at first I was really just challenging men to look at their own stuff and to release the stigma of mental health and everything like that. And I think like as I'm seeing this evolution of myself, just becoming the entrepreneur and the person that I want to become, I've really loved heroes' journeys. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like Star Wars, like any movie out there that you've really loved has a lot to do with the hero's journey. And so I've really loved that whole process over the past 10 years. And now I'm at a point where I get to tell people's stories, which, I mean, I said this off air, but I want the two of you to come on as well, because I look up to so much of what the two of you have done to where you are today. I mean, you came from outside of this country, right? I was born with enough privilege to have lived here my whole life, but to see you guys prosper in the way that you have, I mean, I just want to tell those stories because that's what lights me up. And then so I'll be launching 2 podcasts each week. First one will be on Monday, where it's just mentorship about habits. I get to do stuff that I love. And then on Friday, I get to have people on. So yeah, man, I'm excited about it. Can't believe I made it podcast. Go give it a follow.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah, we're gonna put it on the show notes. So it's you just changed names, right? So it's the same feed.
I just changed names on IG. It's I made it pod. But yeah, man, I'm super excited about it. And the artwork too. When I reached out to her, what she created was super dope, because I wanted something like that, like mind blowing. Like I can't believe I freaking.
Well, that's what inspired. I mean, that's what I thought in the moment that I saw it. So
yeah,
I think it definitely kind of like conveyed that message.
Yeah,
so.
It was dope.
That's exciting, man.
I appreciate it. I'm excited about the venture and excited to have you two on.
Yeah.
Y'all, I give you both shit, but you two are huge motivations to me. That's the last time I'm going to say it.
Thank God this is recorded, because we can play it on repeat all the time.
You can put it on repeat.
Yeah.
That's exciting, man.
Yeah,
Before I go to the gym, I'm just going to save the snippet and just be like, woo, let's go.
Let's go.
So what's going on with you, Tony? How's your baby? How's everybody kind of like doing down there in like South Florida? Did you get hit with Elsa? Elsa did not
just
come
some rain. I heard it hit you guys harder though in Tampa. No,
not too bad.
No?
It didn't wake me up, so I'm guessing. And there's no trees like falling down outside.
Wasn't it during the day? Or you just sleeping all day?
No. It was at nighttime. Tampa hit at night. So
gotcha.
Yeah. Such a foreign concept to me. I don't even know how you guys deal with like actual hurricanes. Like I can imagine it's scary. That's not anything.
We don't really like Floridians. Like they don't really give a crap. They're like when they say tropical storm. Like when they heard about tropical storm, they're like, oh, it's just rain.
Yeah.
And then if it's a hurricane, it's like okay, like it's just gonna go and hoard like food and it's just kind of like make sure they empty the kennels, and then like obviously after that like it's nothing. Nobody really gives a crap. So it's just
when I was working at the University of Florida, there was a hurricane coming, and hurricanes never go through Gainesville because it's right in the middle of the state. And I remember a hurricane like a category 3 or 4 was coming and was going to get to Gainesville as like a 2 or something. And I was like, all right, we got the day off from work. Let's go do a hurricane party. So me and Nate, I'm like, we got to get as much booze as possible. We literally we get the booze, we're drinking. The next morning, our boss calls like, hey, where you guys at? We're like, I thought there's like a hurricane. What do you mean? No, there's still practice. We were hungover, like having to deal with like 2 days of football. I'm like, worst idea ever. Because I thought it'd be a day off. But in sports, There's a hurricane.
Wait.
They just move them inside, man.
So
Yeah.
you were there around the time that Tebow was doing his thing, correct?
No, after Tebow.
After?
After
Okay.
Tebow, yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Trying to
Coach
think
Mack
who-
who was there at the time.
Yeah.
Trying to think who was big then, but Tebow was there announcing, so that's about as close as I got to him.
I would see him work out every time at IMG. Like he would train there a lot of times and do like, some, throwing work and stuff. But anyways, well, interesting turn of events here.
So what's new with you, Anders?
On Anders? You can now call me Andy. Thank you very much.
My name is Andy.
Andy
yeah,
Ayesta.
So last week I went from Andres Ayesta to Andy Ayesta. That's like literally my new American name. But yeah, so I became after 12 years in the US, I became a US citizen.
Cheers.
Cheers, man.
Cheers to that. My water
Dude,
bottle just got
congratulations,
empty,
brother.
but thank you so much. I honestly got an overwhelming amount of support and really like a lot of like people reach out to me. It's like, it's incredible, but it was also interesting and to kind of hear some obviously people from here, actual Americans saying like, I had no idea how hard it is for some people to kind of go through that process and everything that you had to endure. And like, sometimes like even almost like getting to a point where you really thought that you had to leave, like, to kind of get to that point.
Wow.
So it's been a journey, but I'm sure like if you bring me to your podcast like this, we can kind of talk more in depth into those kind of like things,
dude.
So we can kind of save some of that juice for that. So
yeah, no, we definitely will. And let me say this too, man. I just again, I've seen your process through, when we first met, where you've come from the standpoint of like building a really great business and just working on personal development, but seeing how happy you were, dude, was really cool to see. Cause I think I oftentimes get caught up just as an American, like these are all the things that we need to work on. But I think there's a beauty of what you sort of showed of like, hey, this has been 12 years in the making. That was a good reminder for me on 4th of July of like, oh, like there are greater things to be worrying about, or really just to be grateful about. So dude, I was happy to see how happy you were.
Yeah, it was definitely a big deal, definitely for me, and it was just very emotional that moment because of all the things that I kind of endured throughout like the past 12 years. So, but with that, obviously, like it's, and we were talking about this earlier before we hit that record button, which is obviously like the culturally, like what kind of impact did it have on me? Like, how does it feel like to obviously now you're now a U.S. citizen, American, like typically you can kind of call yourself that, and how does that impact my choices, and how does it impact like how I see health, nutrition, which, the straight answer is like nothing really changes. I'm still Venezuelan at heart. Like I'm still going to be, I'm still going to be like, my heritage is never going to change. Like, Antonio, you are Dominicano, like that's just like, yeah, that's just like the reality. So our heritage hasn't really changed. It just basically changes like my actual legal status, and obviously my like or who I obviously like I consider America my home, so I'm very happy and proud to actually be a citizen of this country. But culturally, I definitely think it's interesting to start to kind of dive into like some of the changes that a lot of times like people when they come into this country, they adopt. And some of like the kind of like changes that I even like kind of like me looking back when I moved from like, Venezuela to like, actually I moved here in 2006 to like Indiana, to a little bit of small town, like
working at Applebee's.
Well, actually that was after. So this is like,
really? Okay.
this is a time in which I was in the middle of the cornfield. So culturally it was like crazy. Funny story. I actually, after my citizenship ceremony, I went to a barbecue spot, and I was like, "It doesn't get more American than this." I got mac and cheese, I got brisket, I got green beans, and I got cornbread. I freaking love that. Right,
oh, dude, it's so good.
But I don't even know where I'm going with this. But
I think the only thing better added to that, if you would have like a Budweiser and a pack of Marlboro Reds, just burn right through it, flick it off, and be like, "America, baby."
Well, I think that there's a good transition there of like, I mean, we talked a little bit off air about cultural foods, and I think, and I don't know about how you all feel, but I remember when I was working at the community health center where 92% of our people were just Spanish speakers, and most of our docs were white and were white men and women. And I remember sort of coaching the doctors through like, hey, like these are our people's like cultural and staple foods. We can't expect them to enjoy chicken and other bland foods without spices, and just kind of like, hey, like this is the way that you should eat. So I think that when we look at foods culturally, I think it's important for all of us to discuss this, because a lot of people get caught up in what they can't have. And I don't know about you, but anytime that someone would tell me, like, if anyone ever told me, even in the medical field, like, hey, you can't enjoy chorizo, I'd be like, dude, kick rocks. Like that stuff is for the birds. I can have whatever the hell I want.
Which is something that happens often, right? Like especially like in doctors' offices, that they're not like culturally friendly, or like they don't really kind of consider that or take that into account. Which is, you know, and we have a client of like you, Dezi, Mexican heritage, and she's like, you know, my doctor simply told me I'm pre-diabetic, and my doctor simply tell me I need to lay off of the tortillas and the corn chips, or the
Rice,
or like the on the rice and stuff like that. And I say, why did he say that? And he said, well, it's because I need to, like, you know, I need to take it easy on the carbs, and you know, like, you know, that's what we eat all the time, right? And I said, but did he explain what the reasoning behind it? It's like, no, which is something I kind of run into. I have nothing against doctors. I respect them so much. I respect the work that they do. I respect everything that they do for their healthcare system, but I don't agree with the way that they manage nutrition these days. And I don't know about you guys, but my clinical experience, 90% of the time that I was actually spent in a clinic, with one exception, like nobody gave a crap about the nutritional recommendations. It was more about using, and honestly, our healthcare like system here in my country, America, right?
There it is.
There it is. I'm gonna throw that out today.
Let's go again.
But honestly, it's not preventive healthcare. It's more of like, you know, treat the thing.
It's
Here's
reactive.
like a medication. It's reactive, right? It's not
Yeah.
proactive. And I think that's a big kind of problem that exists. And it all starts with like what doctors are usually telling you at the beginning, you know, which is like eliminate these foods, like do this. Now, obviously there's like this big wave of keto. Now doctors are just automatically, oh, do keto. That's all they say. Do keto. Yeah. That's all they say, right? No direction, no guidelines.
So I went to the cardiologist with my mom 1 to 2 weeks ago, and the doctor came in and was just asking her about all the medications she takes. And when we get to the end of it, it was just like, oh, you just need to like control, alt, delete, change what medications you're on and change the dosage, as opposed to like, what lifestyle changes does my mom need to make? Why couldn't you refer her to a dietitian that's in the area? And again, I don't work with that field. That's not my passion. It's not that we all can't do that. It's just not our passion, right? Just like they should have a list at every doctor's office of dietitians to refer to. And it's a big disconnect, because like, what pills did we need to put my mom's on, as opposed to like, hey, maybe we should start walking a little bit more often. Maybe you should go see a dietitian and maybe eat some more fruits and vegetables. What are some other things that you're intaking that could help you with your heart, as opposed to what you're not doing? And why just change medications? And we always look to the quick fix, and that's what we've been ingrained. We can talk about it not only in the cardiologist's office, but in weight loss. We can talk about it in performance. It's always about the quick fix and not what takes work. And going to your journey to become an American citizen on this, how many people can relate to that in their weight journey? 12 years to get to where they want. Many times, a lot of things change and you had to get through it. How many times have we gone through it? I think we've spoken about it. I've been trying to be okay with my body since I was in high school, and I recently reflected on that. That's over 15 years. So what you've been trying to do just to become an American, I've been trying to do that just to feel safe in my body. Imagine trying to feel safe in a country. And the other great thing about this country is that if we took Europe and put it on the United States, it would just take up the East Coast of the United States. We have this whole vast country where people are from all over, have different cultural foods, different lifestyles, but somehow we're all united under the States of America. And sometimes you go to like Europe, you go to like, let's say France and Spain, it's two different languages and different kinds of food. Versus here, everyone has different kinds of food, but we all speak the same language, which is such a crazy thing to put in perspective, how big we are and how connected we all are. And then at the end of the day, how food connects us all. Right? Yeah. Because the one thing we will all say, I'll say American as it comes, is hot dogs and hamburgers when it came to July 4th. And I don't care where you're from in the United States, that's probably a staple.
Yeah. That's a typical thing that I think also it's when it comes down to going back to like the whole idea behind doctors and their recommendations and how typically things kind of go in line with that. And it's just, again, like, we, first off, obviously big pharma, right? So doctors are also making big money on, prescribing things, right? Like, if it goes back to the question that we kind of discussed last time, right? Which is endorsements. So you can actually think about it in the same way for doctors. And again, like, I don't want to kind of like throw dirt at anybody or anything in any kind of profession in here, but I would imagine that when there's like, obviously, doctor, because I know there's like, I've worked with sales reps for like, like what's it called, like pills or
Mhm.
medications and stuff like that. And the
Viagra.
reality, well, that would be probably one of them for probably from, like, what's the name of the urologist? I'm sure like they probably had to prescribe and
Yeah.
recommend specific things. But the truth is that, if you're being told, you're a doctor and you're like, okay, you're gonna make X amount of money per year, but that obviously if you're kind of like pushing the specific medications and these branded products, which again, they're gonna be covered by insurance with a lot of like the people that you kind of come see, some of them not. You're obviously going to have a bigger incentive, and this is obviously what's going to look like, right? So of course, like, for your livelihood as a doctor and obviously kind of make more money, perhaps that's going to be like what your main kind of driver is. I'm going to use a medication for that. I just think a lot of times, like, I would love to see doctors that are kind of following more of an holistic approach and saying, like, you know
Yeah.
what, let's forget about this medications. Let's first figure out exactly what's going on in your life. Like, what do you do daily? Like, what is like your lifestyle looking like? Like, what do you walk? Do you exercise? Do you anything like that? Right. It's just usually more like the direct approach of like, they look at the weight, they look at the BMI, they're like, hey, you're obese. You're actually need to lose some weight. Like, you know how many people I talk to every day that they say, like, my doctor told me I needed to lose weight. And it's like, based on what? Like, you don't look like you need to lose weight. You don't look like you actually kind of have a problem with all this. Well, it's just like, he just told me because like my weight right now,
BMI.
it's like, but according to these standards, and it's like up higher. It's like, are we still doing this? Like, this is still like a thing, and it is. You
They
know?
are. They are. I mean, I think that's probably one of the most outdated things that the medical community still uses. I remember working at the community health center, and we've talked about this. Like, we made the comparison of dietitians and nutrition coaches, and our separation was like, listen, there's some bad nutrition coaches out there and some really good ones. Same thing with dietitians. It's the same thing with docs, right? We've all worked with tremendous docs. And again, let me also voice, Andres and TC, what you're saying. Nothing against the medical community. We are so thankful for you all. It's a collaborative effort. We're all working towards preventative and holistic care. But if we go back to it, I think one of the things that I used to see is like, they get markers and certain things for a certain amount of diagnoses, right? Which is why if that BMI is anywhere above that 30, then it's like obesity, like, cool, all right, that's a marker. I remember that I used to have clients in there and I would just show them like, listen, I understand what the concern is here. Let's look at your lifestyle factors just to put it in perspective. Like right now with where I'm at, my BMI is 29, almost at obese, right? Do I look obese to you? Well, no, you don't. Okay, well, there are some limitations to this. And I think it's important for a lot of the listeners and people who have gone to doctors to stay informed and to ask if they have a dietitian, because we do what we do because we are well versed in it. Whereas in the medical community, they might, I don't even know what the coursework looks like. From what I've seen, it's a class, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes. It
Okay.
If
depends
they're
on the
lucky,
course. Yeah.
if
Like, yeah,
they're
Yeah.
it
lucky.
depends. It depends. I mean, I'm one of my current clients. He's an MD, and he works in New Mexico. He's originally from Nigeria, but I asked him, and he said like, I think it's just only like one class, and now he's actually kind of studying for like he's an obesity certification within obviously that's different because now you're obviously kind of taking on more things. But the truth and the reality is like, it's they don't really kind of get as much training into this kind of like specific areas, and that's the crazy part. Like, I was talking to one of my clients who just started working with me like a couple of weeks ago. I work with a few women that have PCOS, and that obviously it's like hormonal havoc kind of going on for some people, but every woman is different when it comes down to it.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I asked her is like, are you taking any medications? Like, well, before I got pregnant, I was taking metformin. I was like, oh, I'm guessing PCOS. One of the things that happens is insulin resistance. It's like, so do you have obviously high blood sugar? Like, do you have insulin resistance? Actually, I don't. He's like, Andres, I don't think I do. I was like, so what do you mean? So why were you prescribed medication that is prescribed for diabetics, pre-diabetics, and people with insulin resistance. Is like, I don't know. That person said, or the doctor told me that it's going to help me manage my hormones. It's going to help me manage my blood sugar. So in essence, maybe explained really the reasoning behind it, but she had no clue. So I said, like, there's absolutely no reason, right? And I'm not a person that is going to tell you to stop taking medication because I don't have that authority. But in my opinion, there's no reason why you should be taking something like this. And I have known of also people that are using metformin just simply for weight loss, right? So like that, and that to me, it's like there's countries in South America where metformin you can get over the counter, and the doctor would tell you to just go and get this and start taking it without really understanding like what are like the long-term effects, because metformin is not like a supplement. It's a real deal medication that can bring out some problems in the future in terms of heart health and other kinds of things like that being shown in research. So it's mind-boggling to me to kind of see just people's like, oh, they just put metformin in there. It's kind of like me like literally saying like, oh, you have a weight problem, let's actually put you on this supplement. Like, and again, that's a little on the safe side because it's well, not really, but it's I guess like supplements.
Just put you on a shit ton of caffeine.
Oh, you just want to like, I'm just gonna put you on like 500 milligrams of caffeine.
Like,
there you go. And then the person starts complaining. It's like, I have a heart rate. It's like, no worries, it's so good. Like it doesn't.
I'm not hungry. Like,
so that's crazy. Yeah. And then GB has her fair share of like doctor experiences and good and bad ones, right? So she's had some really terrible bloating issues. And every single time it's like, it's kind of, they blame her. It's like, oh, it's probably like this, or it's probably nothing, or it's, and she feels like she doesn't want to go to doctors as much because of that reason.
She feels unheard. Yeah,
exactly. But then she went to one recently, and she's like, and he's like, okay, like let's figure out what's going on. What are you eating? Okay, let's try this, and I want you to come back in this time. Let's figure out what this is kind of like doing for you. Let's try this. Let's do this test. Let's do this that. Let's actually look into this kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's more like, okay, let's figure out what's going on. Right. So that is what I would want to see into all that. And a doctor saying like, you know what, this is something that needs more support from the lifestyle, behavior, and nutrition modifications. And I think you should do this, but the best way to really start working on this is getting support and help on this area. Right. Yeah. Like I mean, I'm sure they say when they kind of suspect some mental kind of health problems, they're going to tell them you should probably see a psychiatrist. Here's a referral. Right. Like you should probably see a therapist. You should probably see this person. But I don't see that as a common type of thing. Like, I don't think I've ever heard, I get reached out by sometimes medical offices and they're like, and here's the other problem. It's the insurance like companies, right? You know how hard it is for a dietitian to enter a network right now? Like,
that's why I never did it. It's ridiculous.
Like, it's insane. Like Florida Blue, which is obviously one of the biggest kind of insurance companies in the state, they do not like. I don't think they've been accepting applications for new dietitians into their network since I don't know how long. I did this like 4 years ago when I tried. It's like, nope, we're not taking it. So really, for somebody that takes insurance, they would have to go on their network. For some insurance companies, they would have to go all the way down to Miami to be able to kind of see a dietitian that is like covered under their insurance. So I'm like, why are not making this stuff more accessible to people, right? That really need it. I would love to be able to be a provider for insurance, even though I know it's a bit of a pain in the ass, but I would love to be able, but if they make the process easier for me and I say, okay, like here's my paperwork, here's my practice, here's what we do, this is what I charge, like how much you're going to be able to cover per client that are part of your network. Done. Right. But it's so red tape and it's so crazy that obviously some people decide not to do it. I know dietitians that build their practices just purely on insurance and billing, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I don't even know how, but they do it, I guess, depending on the state. But the bottom line is it's so hard for people to get support and being proactive about health. And a lot of times, like some very limited insurance companies, they actually help. They cover preventive weight loss or preventive. Like the other ones are more like you have to have a diagnosis, right? You have to be diagnosed with obesity before you can actually go and see a doc or a dietitian, and for us to be able to kind of cover that. So that's a problem, right? Like that is a problem.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, so like we've all worked with professional athletes, right? We've all been in that little sect of our careers. Right now we're looking at Western medicine, right? if we look at the sports and performance side, there's a shit ton of Eastern medicine that happens each and every day. I mean, look at the training staff, look at the type of work that they get. I just, what I oftentimes have a really hard time with, and this kind of goes on us with what you had said this last one, where TC stole your quote, which was so funny, by the way. So Andres, if you could for our listeners one more time, this is your quote. What was the quote again?
Not mine.
I totally forgot. You
Oh
can't
my
put me
God.
on the spot right now, but I basically say, like, your life is kind of like a sports, like, and when you're not fueling your body properly, you're constantly underperforming.
Okay. Well, let me go ahead and just steal your quote because you forgot your own quote, right? So if life was a professional sport, most people are underperforming, right? So if we
Isn't
go
that what I
back to
just said?
no, you said something different.
Okay.
So if we go back to
Okay,
like what's
got it.
happening on the sports and performance side, like it really bothers me that this is not accessible to a larger extent to the public, or that they don't know about it. I don't really know which one it is. I mean, I didn't know about it before working in it, so it could just be there's a lack of education in the area. But I mean, Tony, like we've both worked in baseball. What were some of the things that you saw that you're like, why doesn't everyone have access to this?
A lot. But like, even taking it a step back to like the cultural aspect, I remember when I first went down to the Dominican Republic to one of our facilities, the first thing they said to me is like, just don't cut out the rice. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
I'm not here to
What do
do
you
that,
mean
bro.
cut out the rice? Like, yeah, just don't cut out the rice. And I was like, why would you even think, like, I'm not here to change anything. I just want to like get a better perspective of what you have here. And it was just like, oh no, because the last dietitian that came, the first thing they said was get rid of the rice. And we had a strike outside the kitchen from all the players because there was no rice. And they wouldn't play baseball. And I was like, holy crap. I'm like, I'm not taking
Don't
away
touch
rice.
these cultural
Like,
foods, bro.
I love rice. I could eat rice every day. But what don't they have access to? Like, there's a lot of things they don't have access to that they should. And I think it's the same. So I remember when I would go down, just talk about hydrate or dihydrate, there was no access to water 24/7. So just having that, making it easy for them because they lived on the second floor. There was no good water access on that second floor. So having someone go and put a 5-gallon jug of water there every night helped those players stay hydrated. So the things that they have access to and don't have access to, it's like, that's what a dietitian's there to help figure out. What can we do as healthcare professionals to help see what those blind spots are that someone needs to have these lifestyle modifications?
And I think the biggest blind spot is definitely the lack of education, specifically here in the US. And it's like not being able to tailor recommendations and education according to people's cultural backgrounds. And I think that's a bigger thing that us here as Hispanic dietitians, we get to see very often, which is most people I talk to, and a big kind of like part of our client, our clients right now are, I think about 50% are going to be Hispanic or some Hispanic heritage. And the first thing they tell me is like, and they kind of like, when they talk about what they eat, right, they just kind of start making faces like I eat this, and they're kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Ashamed. Right. They're ashamed that they're telling a dietitian that they eat rice and tortillas and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's great. Like, we just need to figure. Yeah, so do I. So
it's amazing.
We just need to. But that's obviously the perspective they have. It's like, what are you? Here's the thing. Like, most people, the perspective of a dietitian is like, what are you gonna cut out from? Like, don't cut this out for me. And it's funny because people sometimes know me. Friends of mine know me, and I have some friends that have started working with me recently, and they know that I don't believe in that. They know I'm not gonna tell them to do that. And the first thing they say, it's like, please don't cut this out from. It's like, I'm not gonna cut anything out. Like, it's not about cutting things out unless you obviously have an intolerance to something that you can't tolerate it. Sure. But it's not, if your goal is weight loss, weight maintenance, like, weight management, the goal is not to cut things out. And obviously that's going to be the first thing, for example, that a non-cultural or not culturally friendly dietitian, I don't know what's like the right word to kind of use in terms of that. Yeah. But that would be a person, for example, that say, and I've heard obviously this is like, and there you have like a Mexican American, and they're coming in and they kind of give them a program or a nutrition plan that literally includes like, bread, and not necessarily that's bad. It's just simply like the kind of like foods that they're including in that have absolutely nothing to do with what they typically eat at home.
Like meat and potatoes.
Meat, potatoes, like all these different
American
things like
mac
that.
and cheese.
Yeah.
Right. Like you were just saying.
Yeah. And then you see obviously somebody that normally eats like rice, beans, tortillas, like, you know, stuff like that. And they're like, okay, I guess I'm going to eat this, but I'm not a big fan of it. And I don't necessarily like it too much. Right. And they feel that those things are bad. And I think that's where this comes from. Right. It comes from the idea that a lot of times that they're being given recommendations that are not culturally appropriate. And because of that reason, then they start to fear those things, and they start to kind of think like, if I eat these things, I'm not on a diet. And if I eat these things, I am, or if I eat this, I'm not on a diet. Or if I kind of completely cut them out, then I'm technically on a diet, right? The type of thing. It's like they don't understand that there could be a place where they can include those foods and still be able to accomplish their goals. And it just comes down rooted in that lack of education, not only for the consumer, but also for professionals that don't know how to deal with this kind of populations, I feel like.
Yeah.
Honestly, even within the Hispanic populations, there's so many deviations in food. I remember when I started working in baseball, even the words we say for, like, say, banana are different in each one of our cultures. I remember the first time a Venezuelan asked me for un cambur. I'm like, a what? He's like, un cambur. And I'm like, I don't even know. What are you calling me? And then one of the Dominican guys like, no, un guineo, which is how we call it. And then someone else like, no, un banana. And I was like, all right, hold on. Are we all talking about this yellow thing I have in my hand? Is this what this guy wants? Awesome. So it's just like those small things that we're not used to. Like in the Cuban culture, it's typical to have a banana with rice and beans. It is not very typical in my culture. I'm not talking about maduros. I'm talking about like an actual banana, right? And then with the Mexican culture, I remember working with Mexican players, and yes, they do eat tacos, but it's not the same tacos at Taco Bell. And then when Americans would come in and try to educate these baseball players, it's like you have such a big gap because you don't understand all the different varieties and spices of what a Hispanic baseball player likes. As much as they like to say that they have it under control, I can guarantee you about 99% of the dietitians that are working in baseball don't have a grand idea about it. And if they go down to visit these facilities in these countries, they're just like, their mind is blown. And it's not, I'm not against them. I'm happy there's dietitians in some of these teams, but it's just like, you need to bring on the right staff or the right consultants to help you see those.
Or get educated on it. I feel like you can definitely learn this stuff. It's more about like getting educated and understanding and getting immersed into that. You know, to be honest, like I know everything that there is to know in terms of like American culture and American like ways of eating, like from the Midwest, like from like the type of like kind of foods that they typically kind of crave. So when I'm having a conversation with somebody like that lives in Ohio, that lives in like Wisconsin, like I'm not gonna be talking about rice and beans and getting like, you know, perhaps the stuff that
potatoes.
I'm gonna be talking about other kinds of different like corn-based type of foods. I'm gonna like, you know, like Midwest is like very corn-based, and I'm gonna be talking a lot more like very like, you know, homey type of dishes. And then we look at people from Georgia, from the South, is going to be very soulful foods, right? So I have learned that because I live in places like Texas, I live in places like Indiana, I live in places like Florida. With Florida, it's just a mix of everything, right? So it's understanding like who you're talking to and what it is. And there's no better way to do this than really just asking, like, what did you typically eat? Like, what foods do you love and what foods do you don't? Let's make a list, right? It's like, I love this, I love that, I love this. Perfect. Okay, so start. So you don't even need to have like this massive knowledge on like culturally appropriate foods, or like, okay, what are some of the things? You can just start off with what people tell you that they like, right? And start to help them understand that you can have this food. You just need a matter of figuring out exactly how that kind of fits into the full picture here. Like how can you build like, or how can you add the tortilla to your meal? How can you add the rice and the beans where you can add more protein type of thing, you know? And I think that's the bigger thing. We have one client in New York, Mexican heritage, and the whole family changed, right? Because their daughter, like less than 25 years old, was pre-diabetic with A1C levels that were put him on almost on the verge of obviously being put on medication for diabetes. And she just completely reversed that. But it was a team effort from the whole family, right? You gotta change like the way that you kind of eat. And you can ask her like, hey, Sharon, are you incorporating tortillas right now in your diet? It's like, yes, I am. Okay. Are you eating rice? Yes, I am. Right. Are you eating fruits and vegetables? Now I am. Right. So it's like, it's like adding certain things that are missing and building them into like what's kind of going on right now. And it's a complete shift. but it starts with not only what you're putting on your plate, but it starts obviously with the mind and the mindset that kind of comes, along with this. But it's a change. It's not just starting from just, like a dietitian telling them what to eat. It's more about the social media, the what typically you kind of hear on media on what not to do. Then you study that show that eating, like, I'm sure at some point the rice obviously causes this, and then obviously every people in every culture that kind of eats rice is kind of like wrong, and then like the Asian populations have it all wrong because of whatever. Like, it's like some of those things that a lot of times, like, that's a good example. Like,
Waste
you
my
could
time.
not, tell me, you cannot put me, because right now I don't understand that as much. You cannot put me to actually work with and Asian populations, because I don't fully understand the entire cultural aspect of it. Right? I'm just dumb in it. I just know there's a lot of rice, right? But then I don't know anything else. So I had to study and understand that a little bit to be able to figure that out and
Well,
be able to manage somebody better.
well, that's kind of where, like, I mean, there's two things that we're discussing here. I think one, diversified dietetics, like shout out to them. Like, they do a tremendous job of bringing out these dietitians of color and talking about it and talking about the issue behind our field, because I do think that we do have a huge issue with inclusivity. I don't know what the actual metrics are. I know men of color, like Latinos, as dietitians, I think it's like less than 2% or something like that. So I
Mm-hmm.
think inclusivity definitely matters. And I think even more so that for our other dietitians too, is seeking out resources to become a bit more culturally competent, all while doing what we should all be doing anyway, where it's like, if you're working with someone, you're getting to know them. Like, I think, like, for most of us getting out of school, it was really easy to regurgitate some facts, and it's like, all right, I help this person. But the more I think we've all evolved, it's like, let me truly connect with this person and further their understanding. Because, like, Andres, you're right. Like, I have not had a great deal of Asian clientele. However, when Men's Health reached out, like, hey, can you comment on MSG? That caused me to, like, go in, like, all right, let me educate myself on what this is. And so after education, like, okay, I'm a bit more comfortable with, like, speaking on it. But again, it goes back to, like, doing your own education, sitting with the client, getting to know them, and really upholding their cultural foods. Because I think, just like TC, you were saying, if anyone ever said to stop having rice, like, I'm out, man. Like, no, this is part of what my culture does. So I think inclusivity, just a big dose of inclusivity, I think is super important when we're talking about this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it all starts with, I mean, it starts at home though. I mean, but
Mhm.
at the same time, it's more about like the resource. And I think here in the US is like, because like Antonio was saying, we're such a vast country that it's just, and so diverse in so many different ways, that it's just so hard to create something that kind of fits into everybody's plate, right? Because
Mhm.
you have Latinos, you have Asians, you have like, African Americans, you have, like white Americans, like so many different like cultures that it's just impossible to kind of create something either generic. I mean, when you look at, for example, our own home countries, like, you don't have to, like, it's not about culturally, like, it's the same culture, everybody eats the same way, right? Like, there may be some changes from like state to state, like, Venezuela, like the people from the Andes typically eat more specific things, but they all eat arepas, like everybody eats arepas at home, right? Like, no matter what kind of corner in in Venezuela you're going to be in, there's going to be that, like, from the indigenous cultures to like the people in like very rich town areas in Caracas, they're all gonna have the same breakfast, right?
Yeah.
It's not the same here. So we had to make the adjustments according to who we're talking to, because there's literally over 300 million people versus like Venezuela has like 25, 26 million people, right?
Mhm.
So like
Yeah.
just a very, it's like, Venezuela has like the population probably like Florida has, right? So it's so different. And when it comes down to that, and and going back to like the comparison with Europe, how many countries are in Europe that obviously it's only taking half of the United States, right? Like so many countries. And so, I mean, French cuisine and Italian cuisine, complete polar opposites.
Yeah.
Mediterranean cuisine and like Italian cuisine, complete polar opposites, right? Like it's so freaking different. And they're all very demarked and clear different cultures and different kinds of food and palates. And even interesting to kind of see also studies looking at how they eat and how they live. And, you have like obviously Italy, a very carb dense population.
Gains.
and you obviously see a bunch of
Games.
blue zones in there, like of
Yeah.
people living to their hundreds, right? And they're like, yeah, a very lower protein diets and very high carbs, and that obviously starts to make you think, okay, it's not necessarily just about the diet; it's also how they live, right?
Lifestyle. Yeah.
Which one is like the most stressed like out like countries in the world? It's not the U.S. It's actually China, I believe.
I was going to ask,
Or
is it the US?
yeah, it's not the
We got
U.S.
to be in the top 3.
But one, no, it's actually like it's not top, but we live in a country that
But
it's like
we are the
driven by,
best.
it's literally driven by like it's hustle, right?
Yeah.
Like how many countries in Europe actually like work anywhere between 12 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Like very small number of them. How many countries in South America actually work from, they GB just told me that she saw an article the other day that they did an experiment in Iceland, and they literally
Mm.
put people to do did you guys see that, working just
Yeah,
4 days
such
a
a good
week
one.
4 days a week, right?
Who would have known?
And that's all. I was like, hey, we're gonna now do this bunch of people, we're gonna now working like Monday through Thursday, weekend is gonna be 3 days. How's that sound? I'm like, sign me up, right? And what they found, productivity levels went up. Actually, like the I don't know if like I don't know the details, so maybe you guys read this, but I don't know if like revenue in the company went up. I have no clue, but I know
Everything
for
went up.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. So people are just more intentional about the work, and it's not about like kind of burning yourself down to the ground. You guys have any idea? I mean, you see that every day, right? Like how many of our clients come to us and and all they do is like our most recent like recruit, as I call him. It's like, you're my recruit because I'm working. I'm gonna completely change your life. So, and I literally said like, and he literally told me, he's like, dude, I wake up at 7:55 and I log into work at 8 because I'm going to bed at like 2 o'clock because I can't go to sleep. Right. Like I just can't, like I just stay up until late. So I just try to like imagine like literally the first thing that you do is like waking up, and the first thing is like, checking up your emails and like seeing like, your boss, like stuff like it's not healthy.
Yeah.
So then this goes to be way beyond obviously just food. So that's obviously just a conversation for a different day. But then that obviously kind of adds into the whole cultural aspect of things that we're kind of like talking about in here. Like I want to build a successful business that doesn't require me to work 12 hours a day. That's the reality. Like, yeah, I mean, that's the main thing. So, but anyways, I know we're kind of coming to the end, and I know sometimes you guys have appointments and calls and things like to have to be at.
No, man, I moved all my shit for you, buddy.
Whole day's cleared.
Whole day's clear. All right, let's make a like 6-hour podcast. Moving on, next topic. No, but anything else to add? I think that's pretty interesting. Some of the stuff we talked about today.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the lifestyle thing that like TC, you were talking about the doctor not really asking about the lifestyle. I think we do have to make sure that we are addressing those aspects, because Andres, you're absolutely right. I think for the most part, especially as entrepreneurs, like for the most part, it's like you work nonstop. That's like that Gary Vee mindset. Like you should be sleeping maybe 3 hours and then working on your dream the rest. And I feel like just to a larger degree for all of us out there who are really chasing something really big, like burnout is a real freaking thing. And so is chronic inflammation. That's where we get disease in most cases. So like, I don't know, there's just a lot that I think when we go back to lifestyle and truly as clinicians and as dietitians and the medical community, like we need to get to know our people more, ask more questions. Hey, how do you sleep? Do you get some outside time? What are your thoughts on meditation? Like, do you feel stressed? Like those are the damn questions that we should be asking versus like, have you thought about keto?
Yeah, it's just only kind of like trying to put band-aids onto a deeper root cause of the problem. That it's the main problem. It's the main issue here. I think the kind of takeaway here is like we need to become more of a proactive, preventive society and or preventive like health society, and not necessarily being so like reactive in terms of like just simply treating things with like a diet or a pill or like something that is just like to streamline, which we know it never works long term. But well, at least we have businesses and jobs because of that, and there's a lot of work
complaining.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done because we need to fix a lot of things in our society that I feel like right now, like it's not kind of going well. There actually are countries where dietitians are not as needed as places like this. And sometimes like there are countries where you're just like, oh yeah, like I don't even like because I talk to people in other countries and they're like, oh, I can go see somebody like for free, like the government pays for that stuff, right? And the need for that it's not as high as maybe it is in America, right? That tells you obviously where we're at.
Well, we are also performance dietitians, so we help people perform more. So if you want to perform at your best, you're not going to get free advice from Dr. Google. All right, Andres. So
True.
Step
there
it
you
up,
go,
buddy. We are the top. That is it. God bless America.
All right, you're an American now. We're the best.
We're in America. This is what it is. Cool. Well, that's exciting and great that we kind of had to have this conversation. So, signing off here as a new U.S. citizen, Mr. Andy
Aista, dude.
It's funny because like when I was in DC, my friend Matt, I think you guys met him.
Coach Schmidt.
Yeah, Coach Schmidt.
Shut up.
He calls me Dre, so I'm like
officially now.
So like I was like I'm Mr. Dre. Like I was like, and at some point I thought about getting my PhD. So it's like you're gonna be Dr. Dre,
Dr.
bro.
Dre.
Oh, that would be so dope.
Yeah, but so you can call me now Andy or Dre. So in case like you see me on the street. But anyways,
I'll call you Andy.
no Andy. I'm not good with Andy. Anyways, we're signing off here. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you loved this episode, like I guess some people actually loved our last one, based on some comments and some feedback that you, Tony, received. Make sure you let us know. Literally kind of screenshot this, share it with somebody, tagged us on Instagram or whatever, and we would love to kind of see the love, and so we can continue to create more content and more incredible conversations like this. So boys, it was a pleasure as always to have you. We'll see you guys in the next one.